leader of abusive sex cult NXIVM, ordered to pay victims $3.5 million. On July 20th, the leader of the sex cult and multi-level marketing scheme, NXIVM, Keith Raniere, was ordered by the court to pay for the removal of his initials that were burned into the bodies of his female members. The total cost of the restitution is around $3.5 million for the 21 victims. The price includes the cost of surgery for removing the branded initials, mental health therapy, and unpaid labor rendered by cult members and employees. Raniere is currently serving a sentence in an Arizona state prison. On June 30th, actress Allison Mack was sentenced to 3 years for her involvement with the sex cult. Mack supported Raniere in manipulating helpless women, allowing Raniere to prey on their insecurities, turning them into obedient sex slaves. The cult was co-founded by Nancy Salzman, whose daughter, Lauren Salzman, was charged for racketeering in 2019. Nancy, along with Keith Raniere, began operating NXIVM in Albany, New York. So I wanted to cover this story because I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with this organization, which, looks like a bunch of Roman numerals, but it's pronounced NXIVM or NXIVM, which I have a little bit of an obsession with destructive cults and destructive groups. And I've been following the story of NXIVM for some time. And honestly, I think 3.5 million spread across 21 people is very low considering the money that is available to him or his organization. But it is something worth celebrating. And I think more people need to become aware of these types of organizations and also become aware of red flags for destructive organizations such as NXIVM. The full story of this organization is absolutely insane. Like, this is just the tip of the iceberg. But it's really, the stuff that went on inside this cult is on a different level. It's on a different level.
Can you tell us a little bit, if you know?
So part of what happened is, so just to be clear, these initials were branded into kind of the inguinal area, or the inner crotch area of these women. And it wasn't for all female members of this cult. It was for a secret society that was in the cult. So the cult NXIVM was ostensibly, or from the outside, an executive success training program. But it was also a pyramid scheme where people would get higher ranks, which would be signified in the presence of different colored sashes and different colored badges, by recruiting more people into this program. And these training programs were give me a lot of Scientology vibes. It's very pseudo-scientific, taking a lot of stuff that is already established in the psychological field, the stuff that just makes someone more confident, makes someone more assertive. These things are very helpful in an executive environment. And these cult leaders will take these practices and just manipulate them a little bit, use different phrases for them, just kind of repurpose the language and act as if they created this revolutionary new way of self-actualizing. So he would always talk about, being more authentic and using all this for people who study cults, they call it loaded language. And so every destructive organization will use loaded language, which is a way to signify who is knowledgeable of kind of this secret esoteric knowledge and who isn't. And this kind of what started off as a pyramid scheme became this very weird cultic practice where Before this started, Raniere has been a con man and a predator towards children long before he founded this organization. He is a pathological liar who has falsified basically all of his credentials and the things that are supposed to make him authoritative when teaching other people about how to become more successful. And they do kind of a lot of group practices, but it just becomes more and more abusive. They do the standard thing of all the classes that you have to take to get to the next level that earns you more respect and authority within the group, is increasingly expensive. And it's a way to suck you of money and suck you of resources. And there was this secret group within this organization that had the initials DOS, which stood for a Latin phrase that I can't remember correctly right now, which basically means like master over women, or a male master over women or something. And they would just call it DOS for short. And so Allison Mack, who is this, semi-famous actress, she was well known for her appearance in the show Smallville. She became very powerful within this organization, and she would help recruit women into this secret society DOS. And in this secret society DOS, it also was structured similarly to a pyramid scheme, where these women would become slaves they would literally call themselves slaves over other women in the group. And it became a pyramid scheme whereby these women would have to give up collateral on themselves to basically create an extortion situation, a blackmail extortion situation that would keep them under the control of the group. So they would have to produce videos of themselves saying embarrassing things. They would have to hand over nude imagery of themselves, basically providing this organization with their own blackmail material. And this was called collateral, whereby if they did not do the tasks as mandated by their master, then this was hanging over their head as a threat of what would happen to them. They would also...
What was the collateral? Videos of what was the collateral?
Secrets, anything that they find shameful, anything that would be embarrassing, even if it was falsified, nude imagery.
How would you convince people to do this? I don't get it.
Because you are proving how dedicated you are. This is another aspect of cult or destructive undue influence. He had this weird backward way of empowering women, whereby they own their role as women being more submissive. And so to become self-actualized as a woman to a certain extent, you had to live into this submission, which came in the form of this collateral. Collateral could also include you had to pay money. There was a financial cost if you didn't go to the gym one day. So he also had an obsession over women's appearance, to the point that several women who he had the tightest control over basically became severely anorexic, to the point that it threatened their health. So this weird body image thing is also a through line throughout some of this ideology and the group control. Also, controlling someone's caloric intake is a very convenient and very easy way to make them incredibly vulnerable to indoctrination. It's another part of thought reform. And so there are a lot of different aspects to it. He had kind of a wing of this operating in Mexico. So there's this whole kind of several upper crust people in Mexico are implicated in this organization. There are people who are minors at the time who are basically kept locked in a room for years because of the control he had over them. And as part of the way that you become initiated into this secret society, and also as a way that you prove your submission in that you are not denying your authentic self as a woman, you would undergo this ceremony or initiation where you are blindfolded and several women hold you down to a table while one of them takes a cauterizing tool that you use in a medical procedure, to seal wounds and stuff like that to prevent bleeding. And they would burn this symbol into these women's groins. And when you flip the symbol around different ways, you can see that it's a KR for Keith Raniere and an AM for Allison Mack, who is basically his right hand authoritative person. And all the while there is another woman who is filming it. And that footage goes to Keith Raniere, or allegedly to the women who survived this and who participated in this initiation. They had a situation where, like I was saying, the pyramid scheme structure whereby they knew that there was a woman who was assigned to them who recruited them into this DOS secret society within the larger cult that was their master. And they had to unquestionably respond to the demands of their master. And as it turns out, they knew that their masters had masters and that it would go all the way up. They didn't know that at the top of the chain, it was Keith Raniere. And through these systems of control, women were coerced into having sex with him, for example, a lot of forced unpaid labor. There were women who were, masters over other women who would basically infer that it's like, if you don't do this, I'm literally going to be locked in a cage. Like, that's how insane this goes. There were other instances where...
Can you remind us, where is this happening?
In Canada, in Vancouver, in Albany, New York, and in Mexico were some of the major locations for this. Although
I don't understand how these people get away with this. Okay, I don't pay for my parking ticket in time, and people are on me, and I get people are chasing after me, and these people, how do they where's the police? How do these operations continue? People are oh, I'm gonna get locked in a cage if I don't do this. No one's gonna call, is anybody gonna call a cop? Or how do they manage to not any leaks or anybody all of a sudden deciding I'm done, I'm gonna report you? How do people get away with stuff like this? I don't get it.
Well, I think it just speaks to, and it's a good example of, or we can take a moment to, raise a little public awareness about how the depths of thought reform that people will take it upon themselves to self-abuse and abuse others willingly. And if the police busted in, there was a situation in Scientology where the Scientology, the people who are actually they're not paid employees, but they're responsible for the actual operations of the organization, they get put in a place called the Hole. Again, this is Scientology. This is not NXIVM. And they would do this thing where they would play the game musical chairs, but they would basically beat each other up. And there was someone who survived that exercise in Scientology. And they said, if the feds busted into the Hole while that was happening, all of us would have said, we are here of our own free will. What are you doing? So a lot of people underestimate how easily something like this could happen to them. They think, I'm smarter than this. This would only idiots. This only happens to idiots. That's not true. I promise that this could happen to anyone given the right circumstances. This is an aspect of the insidious nature of undue influence. And I encourage everyone to go look up the work of Stephen Hassan, spelled Hassan. And he is a survivor of a cult, and he is a cult expert who developed something called the BITE model. And I encourage everyone to go look up the BITE model, because it gives you basically all the warning signs that you need to know of a destructive organization that has the potential to harm you, because it is basically about the extent to which you give up the locus of control from internal to external. And some of it also just has to do with literally the control that someone has over your immediate environment. Obviously, if you're physically imprisoned. But the whole Keith Raniere becoming arrested was a huge issue. He was kind of on the run in Mexico for a long time until he was finally captured and extradited back into the United States, like fairly recently, which is why the sentencing and stuff is only beginning to happen now. But it really took this one woman who survived the branding, who she, went through this initiation, and basically she went back to her husband and was like, look at what happened to me. And they called the authorities, and because he was in the cult too, he was in NXIVM too. And it took some time, but after this one woman went public, it caused basically everything to begin unraveling.
Is the cult still functioning?
Yes.
Oh, so even after this man's arrest and this lawsuit and $3.5 million, the cult is still like up and running.
Yeah, because they had operations in Albany, New York, which is where their main headquarters was. I don't know the status of like what things are going on in Albany, but like I said, when you are indoctrinated to this degree, people take it upon themselves. They take their thought reform upon themselves. We see this in what's the Chinese communist practice of the sessions where they all get in a circle and they there's a name for it. Basically the prisoners will start doing the work of the indoctrinators for them to prove that they are loyal, that they believe, and that that they're doing what they have to do so that they don't get punished. It's so insidious. Part of the reason why it's also difficult that aspects of this organization are still running is because it is international now.
I wonder how many other cults like this there are who are basically just a little bit more clever than this guy, doing all of the things and using people, but not like going with the sexual abuse or branding people with hot draws. You know what I mean? Like just taking just like a pyramid scheme and taking advantage of people's gullibility and making them feel like they're part of this greater thing, and then just steal their money, you know what I mean? Like, and not go the one step as higher and make doing some of these things that this man did. I mean, I bet you there's so many other ones like that we don't hear of just because they didn't take it to this level. But a lot of people are still like, they're made to feel like special. The leaders are treated like saints or prophets, and they feel like they are changing the world or like some spiritual awakening. Like, this is like, and it all started with like, hey, you want to sell some shampoos, and you want to tell your friends that they could also sell shampoos, and all of a sudden you're worshiping a cult leader. Next thing you know. But yeah, I mean, but there must be a lot of them, right? Like, that don't get to this, they don't get our attention because they didn't go to this level. Right? But go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it often centers around charismatic individuals who are have a severe authoritarian bent, who are malicious narcissists, who attract people around them because they have an ability to present themselves as something authoritative, usually through complete deception and falsification. A lot of the practices that they would do to, in their executive training programs, like, there was this woman who survived this exercise that they did where they would show people basically the most messed up videos that you could possibly find on the dark web. Well, they were hooked up to like EEGs and heart monitors and stuff. And he would say that it's like for a scientific experiment, which wasn't true. They have, ethical review boards for real science, and basically just show people the most traumatizing footage that they could possibly find to just watch their reactions. Like, it's a very just disgusting, weird voyeuristic practice of just like watching people be traumatized. And there are several women who like have severe PTSD from this like practice alone, who didn't even go through like the DOS secret society. Yeah. And there's a lot of really good documentaries about this organization that have come out in the past few years. There's a series on HBO called The Vow, which I highly recommend. If you don't have HBO, there was another series on that you can find on Hulu, or at least a single episode that profiles the woman I was talking about who survived, who really brought attention to what was going on the inside. I really encourage people to educate themselves about undue influence, destructive influence, so that you can be better at identifying red flags of when there is a group or just any ideology really that is destructive to you being your authentic, creative, individualistic self, any ideology or individual or relationship that is trying to take your control away from you and make you believe that you are helpless and that you need them, that you're dependent upon them, which is how stuff like this even is able to continue and thrive.
There's a lot of crypto related cults starting. So, have already started.
What?
So.
I don't know about this. Do they worship Bitcoin like or Doge? Like, how does that work?
Well, people do worship Bitcoin. but there's a whole bunch of other different, Also, when it comes to stocks, also there's cults related to that as well. Anyway, so be careful when people are just telling you about, if it's about management skills, getting rich schemes, Bitcoin, pyramid schemes, getting rich quickly through stocks kind of schemes, all of these, just be very, 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 very careful and mindful. And also, here's actually a good way to test is like, see if people tell you that they could be wrong, right? Or like I think that's one of the best way to recognize if you're in a cult or not, right? If somebody's doesn't display any skepticism ever, or like warn you, gives you disclaimers, tells you that they could be wrong, tells you that that they're not an expert at something, that they need to do some of their own research, or all their own research. These are things you need to be mindful. It's a good way to tell. Go on.
Actually, it's interesting. It's the tactic of some authoritarian leaders that when there is so Jim Jones, the infamous Jonestown massacre, what he would do when there was someone within the congregation, because he was a preacher, who would criticize him in front of the group, like they would say, like, that doesn't sound right, or, I think you're wrong on that. What he would actually do is he would go back, he would go approach that person individually and say, you were right that I was wrong, but the other people, they're not ready to understand that. So I'm bringing you in closer. So that one, he has the people who are smarter closer to him, but also further under his control. And it gives those people who are actually better critical thinkers the feeling that they are more special.
These people, do they have like a cult master class that they all go to? Are they just smart people who know how to manipulate people?
It's just a lot of malicious narcissism. But they do have to have a certain degree of just intelligence to be able to do this. But really quickly, I wanted to give
emotional intelligence.
Yeah. No, they are a lot of them are objectively
I
intelligent.
mean, they're not intelligent enough to be able to foresee that they're gonna go down. They're gonna, they're gonna.
Some of them are. Anyways, which is why a lot of them self-destruct. And take the whole cult down with them, like you see with Jim Jones. Anyways, I wanted to appropriately credit the woman that I was talking about, who was a huge reason why this cult came down. It was actress Sarah Edmondson, who it was the first woman to come forth with the abuse that she experienced. And because of her bravery and her willingness to take the risk of all of the collateral that they had against her, which was extensive, just biting that bullet and saying, like, people have to know what's really going on. She really deserves a lot of credit. So I encourage people to go check out the interviews that Sarah Edmondson has done, and you can learn in a lot more detail about this kind of stuff that this organization would do and how it was structured.
All right. By the way, Sue, your knowledge in this is pretty impressive.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. That was a lot of detail. Thank you for all of that.
Hey guys, if you're a fan of Blasphemy and Sexy Callie, like me, then you need to be sure to subscribe to our newsletter, link in the description below. Because if you subscribe, we will send you a free copy of our Blasphemous Art ebook. And let me tell you, it is the tastiest blasphemy that you can find anywhere available today. And we are so generous with our blasphemy that we continue to send you more blasphemy every week. So make sure to subscribe, link in the description below.